Kensington and Chelsea Pension Board. I'm Councillor Charles Williams. I chair the Pension Board, and I'd just like everyone else present, both members of the committee and officers, to introduce themselves briefly.
Councillor Malcolm Spalding. I'm councillor for Earls Court Ward and a member of this pension board for the employers' representative side.
Okay, I'm Lynn Myers. I'm vice chair and I'm a pensioner member of the board.
Thank you. So it's got Ken and Ken, I think you're here, and Andrew.
Yes, I'm a scheme member representative.
Yeah,
did you all hear that?
Yes, indeed. Yep. Thank you. Right. And Andrew Armand, yes, you're another.
Yes. Hi there, I'm there as well. I'm like Ken, a representative as well. Thank you.
Right. And which I know we've got Yasmin from governance, and the who are the other officers attending? I think we've got Phil Triggs.
Yeah, hi, Phil Triggs, Tri-Bar Director for Treasury and Pensions.
And also, who else? Right.
You've got Matt Dawson, so I work for Phil in Treasury and Pensions. Part of my remit is the coordinating these meetings.
Right, thank you. Have we got David Coates or Trevor Webster yet, who I think are going to be dealing with the administration side? No.
Yes, David Coates is here.
Okay, fine. Okay, right. Well, let's go. Any declarations of interest?
Chairman, just quickly, can I introduce Julia Stevens? So she's the pension fund manager for the RBKC fund.
Right.
Hi all.
Yes, thank you. Now, fine. Declarations of interest. Any member of the committee or any other member present should declare any pecuniary interest. I am in receipt of a very small pension from the RBKC pension fund. Any other declarations? No. Okay, if we can move on to minutes. I'll just say, if you're not speaking, it would be helpful if you could mute your microphone. So the next thing is the minutes of the meeting of the pension board held on the 11th of March. Are we agreed? Are you agreed that I sign those? Agreed? Right. Okay, well, if I'm presented with a copy, I will sign them. But I haven't been given a copy for signature at present. So the next item is we consider, but we do not obviously have to approve, the minutes of the investment committee held on 10th of February. And I believe there was also a meeting in May, and we haven't seen draft minutes of that. So that is a problem I hope we will resolve in future by having our meetings close to those of the investment committee. Right. Any questions or comments on the investment committee in February?
Quick question, Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
On page 2, item A63.
Yes.
I just wondered if somebody could either tell us or research and let us know at a later meeting. Under A63, the employer's contribution rate has been fixed for 3 years at 16.1%. And I just wondered, how does that compare with what other borough schemes do? Do they fix for 3 years, and do they have a comparable employer's contribution?
Yes, Chairman, I can take that question. In comparison with other boroughs, and obviously there are around 89 LGPS administrating authorities in England and Wales. The parameters of the triennial valuation are set by legislation, so or by regulation. So we, in terms of the actuarial practice, it is set down in law. The actuary is required to set the primary and secondary contribution rates. So this refers to the primary contribution rate. It is standard practice in terms of a consistent contribution rate throughout the 3-year period, and again that 3-year period is set in regulation. It's standard practice for an actuary to set the consistent rate throughout that 3-year time period. In terms of comparison with other LGPS administering authorities, I would say this is very much at the lower end, and it takes into account RBKC's successful investment strategy and the fact that it is 125% funded as at the valuation date.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from that? Regarding the May meeting of the investment committee, which I attended part of, I think the key issues do come to this board in separate papers, so we are not being left out of the loop. Right. If we may, then we'll move on to A5. Again, is this a paper that went to the investment committee in May, or is it? I think this is for Phil Triggs to present.
Yes, Chairman. So the investment strategy update, I think Julia is planning to present one of these papers. Can I just confirm which one you want to do, Julia?
Sorry, I was on mute. I was talking and didn't realise. So I'm happy to go through this. This was presented at the investment committee's May meeting. So everyone attending should have also received the update from Mercer as well. I'm happy to talk through the paper. So this was relating to the ongoing COVID pandemic. We saw a significant volatility across the market since February, since the pandemic started. We saw equity markets fall and the credit spreads widened across the board. RBKC pension fund did end up falling about 14.5% between the end of December valuations, but we did recover slightly, but there was a fall of 155 million on our valuations at the end of the financial year on the 31st of March. I think it's quite important, though, to note that we do keep an eye on the valuations, and positive news that we have seen a full recovery when looking at June valuations. So it's positive news for the pension fund. We had Mercer presenting, and they discussed the market situations, which I think members should have a copy of the presentation that they gave. It noted that Perford was still underperforming, and as per the investment committee notes from previous meetings, the decision was made to invest, move it, sell the Perford positions entirely, and reinvest into the LGIM funds. So we successfully made this transition. We had an agreement with LGIM, which meant that we weren't holding on to any cash, and we minimised our risk, which was really great. And we completed the transition on the 22nd of June.
Thank you very much. Right. I'm now actually going to, I think at this point, bring in the exchange of emails, which I had a few days ago with Phil Triggs. this is sort of something that keeps me awake at night. Seriously, I think there is an issue here that we have over the years been very successful in our investments, but as I think Phil in his response recognised, that having perhaps a higher exposure to equity than some other funds does mean there's potential volatility, and that there is a risk, admittedly a small one, that we could end up in a bad place at the next triennial valuation, and that the investment committee hasn't adopted a strategy which recognises, in my view, this possibility. And so what I would like to do with the committee's pension board's agreement is to formally write to the investment committee, asking them with their investment advisors to address this issue. Because if we found ourselves, which is conceivable but unlikely, less with a lower funding ratio than most LGPS schemes at the next triennial valuation, I think we would have to have a very large increase in employer contributions. So I would be grateful if members could give me their comments on this.
Can I ask a question, Chairman,
yes,
relating to 1.1? And Ms. Stevens pointed out there was a 14.5% fall from December the 31st, but it doesn't say the date that fall was crystallised. But it does say recovering to the year end 31st of March. 155 million. Well, that's 13.6%.
So I think, sorry,
of the 1.134 billion. So first of all, 13.6, is that crystallised at the year end 31st of March? And then did I hear you say we had fully recovered the value by June?
yeah, so I think the 14.5 represents the point of when it was the largest fall that we had, and so that by the point of 31st of March we had slightly recovered on that fall, which is why you're seeing a quite a lower percentage of 13% by the 31st of March.
Yep.
And then by June, the latest valuations that we have recovered completely following the COVID valuations. We saw fall, and we are back above our December and March valuations.
Well, that's very reassuring, because I know personally with equities that I've got, I'm about 20% down.
Yes,
to date. That's come up a lot, from 40% down in some cases, and it is still sort of very. Is it the beta is very variable, and so it is. I mean, the chairman is quite right. It's a very volatile market, and that leads me to my second question, if I may. Are you referring to Mercer's presentation slides? What might the opportunities be?
Yeah.
And if I could ask on that, this is genuine ignorance on my part. It seems to talk about something called multi-asset credits. Can I ask, is this, rings a slight alarm bell with me, is that what we used to call collateralized debt obligations, toxic debt packages? Because we got our fingers burnt with that in 2008. And also, you know, even our own credit union has gone bust. And are they talking about us moving funds into multi-asset credit products?
Can I come in on that one, Chairman? Multi-asset credit, it covers the entire range of fixed income possibilities and puts them in a diversified basket of investments, as it were. Obviously, with fixed income, the safest elements of fixed income, you'd have government bonds. in developed and undeveloped markets, and then corporate bonds, obviously debt issued by companies, again, followed by other areas of credit, such as high yield. So the multi-asset credit, a manager would pick a basket of those fixed income categories and form a portfolio. So the various products that you were talking about, the collateralized debt, there might be a very, very small proportion of such investments in a multi-asset credit portfolio, but very, very little, given that it forms such a minor part of the fixed income market. In terms of the committee's appetite for a multi-asset credit portfolio, there wasn't that much enthusiasm shown at the meeting back in May. With the RBKC fund, given that the committee has terminated the Perford portfolio and Perford as a manager, there is the need to have some form of fixed income exposure. And it's for Mercer to come back to the next meeting and give the committee some options for a fixed income exposure for the whole fund. But as we stand at the moment, I don't know if Councillor Williams can back me up on this, but there wasn't that much enthusiasm shown for a multi-asset credit portfolio.
Yes, I think that was my recollection, and also I would share Councillor Spalding's concerns, because I think what we learned in 2008 was that risks which people thought were not correlated were correlated, particularly when looking at this sort of investment. And I think the lack of transparency to the investor is one of my concerns. So yes, I would share those views.
Good. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Okay. Any further comments or questions?
Chairman, did you want to expand further on your concerns reference the risks?
Yes, I mean, I think the problem is essentially that it's a question the investment our job isn't to tell the investment committee where to park the funds, but I think it's a question of the risk that they need to address, and in particular they need to ask Mercers to address and say, look, we've got a pension board who are worried about this, and what can we do to address this risk? There may be that they say, well, there isn't anything, but at least it needs to be addressed. I mean, one solution could be to put everything into fixed interest, and then you get very low returns. But as I say, I'm just saying it's partly personal experience. I mean, I worked in the city in the early 70s when the markets really did fall. So what I'm looking for is the pension board to support for me to sort of write formally to the investment committee along the lines I suggested in my email to you, and also I take account of your response, which I thought was very helpful. So
I support your approach very much so.
Thank you, Liv. Right, Malcolm. Yeah,
Chairman, if we're talking about risk, are we sort of moving to A6 a little bit?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I was thinking of raising this matter under A6. I mean, if it's a fair point, because I mean, but I looked at the risk register and it didn't seem to be expressed. I could argue that it should be in the risk register, but the I mean, I think it's something that needs to be recognised, and I think the correct me if I'm wrong, officers, but I think the investment committee rather left the examination of the risk register to us. Is that right? They didn't.
Yes, that's correct, Chairman.
Yeah, they didn't sort of go down, and some of it things that, okay, they like administration, they're not so keen on getting involved with. But yes, I mean, this could be dealt with. I thought because we were dealing with strategy, I would bring it up now.
Well, support your approach completely, Chairman. I think we all do. And, we support your letter. And I would almost say, support it without seeing it, because you very clearly enunciated what the content's going to be.
Thank you, but I mean, it doesn't. We got a few weeks. I can circulate a draft to members of the committee, the board. Okay, is that agreed? Thank you.
Yeah.
And I assume everyone else agrees. Right. We now turn to the risk register. I must confess, this is something I'm quite familiar with, having dealt with it at the audit committee as well, risk registers, but I've never examined a risk register in a virtual meeting. So I'm not sure the best way of dealing with it. But if anyone would like to introduce it, it might be helpful, because the risks really fall into two categories of investment risks and really administration and operational risks. I mean, maybe two different officers wish to address us on that.
Yes, Chairman. In terms of the way that this schedule is compiled, it's very much a working document, and one where any officer can contribute in terms of either change to existing risks in terms of mitigating actions and scores, or the introduction of new risks where these appear on the horizon. I mean, there's no set right way to go about this. It's use of imagination and forethought and foresight into where we stand in this world and what could befall us into the future. This is obviously brought to the committee and the board on a quarterly basis, so it will form part of the agenda for times to come. We are very, very happy as officers to discuss each and every risk on the schedule, with a view to either improving the mitigating actions, to tighten up on the things that can be done to prepare for such eventualities or possibilities. We can adjust the scores according to discussions that are generated as a result of looking at the schedules, and adjust these and bring them back for discussion the next time. As you say, Chairman, the schedule has been divided into administration risk and investment risk. Forefront of the discussions at the moment concerning administration should be the report in the paper concerning the Surrey administration, which looks likely, well, in terms of RBKC, definitely that will terminate shortly in the future, with the service being brought back in-house. So I don't plan to focus on any other risks for discussion, Chair. I'm happy to take the views and considerations of the committee and come back accordingly.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, the child surf and Surrey is a subject of a separate item in the lengthy paper, so I suggest we don't discuss that. I wanted to ask, one thing that caught my eye was on page, which is unfortunately not numbered, it's just a small one, number 17, to do with the BT contract wind down. Have we reached a stage where that can be removed, that the risks relating to the transfer of payroll from BT to Hampshire have basically that's over and done.
Yes, Chair, that really is a risk that's from the past in terms of that BT contract. We've now, as an authority, moved onto the IBC portal. So in terms of the number 17, we can adjust that and exclude that from the next meeting.
Right. Right. Any further questions?
Chairman, I've got two questions on the front page, Mr. Trigg's background and recommendations, and then two suggestions on the risks, if I may. The question is, you talked about the already identified risks of governance, or shall I say, governance of investment and funding. And then the second risk already identified is that of administration. That's what I read from the background section of your 1.1, 1.2. But then you say we've introduced, I think it's 3 new risk categories. One is anything related to COVID-19 as it affects markets. The next is illiquid asset values, i.e. property and infrastructure. And the third one seems to be COVID-19 as it may affect administrative services. Have I identified those 3 new risk categories correctly?
Yes, Chair. Yep.
Thanks. So then looking at the actual risks themselves, number 4 on the first page, volatility in global investment markets. It seems to be a bit biased against the US. I don't know if you've got something against Mr. Trump. It says disruptive politically inspired events in the US. Now, actually, I think China is far more significant here than the US. So I don't know why the US has been identified as the enemy, where they're actually our allies.
Yes, Chair, maybe we could temper that particular narrative. As you say, it is very much a global situation at the moment. There's not really focus on any one particular country. So we are happy to revise that narrative there.
Well, I think actually it is true that there are disruptive politically inspired events in China, or, by China, not the US. Risk number 3, it's got the highest score, 33, is the increase in life expectancy, but the rate of increase is dropping. And I just thought that was a bit odd that was identified as a risk rather than as a known.
You're correct in as much as the latest figures and assumptions employed in the actuarial valuation of 2019, there was an adjustment made to take account of the latest research, which, as you say, it doesn't point to a reversal of longevity, but a slight slowing down in longevity improvements. And that is obviously, that's one particular measure taken for one valuation. So it wouldn't stop us in terms of monitoring that and monitoring that rate of change in mortality. And obviously with the COVID-19, I'm sure there will be further adjustments when the data becomes known for the valuation in 2022. Where we'll have more accurate information as to the latest position then, but it doesn't. that slight change in the rate of improvement, it wouldn't stop us looking at that very carefully.
And then finally, Chairman, if I may, on the third page, I think it is, number 11, under operational risk 11, and it picks up the Chairman's theme about ethical investments. It's talking about environmental and climate emergency and investment in, I think we should have something in there. It does talk about the fund may consider investing in low carbon assets. You don't specifically mention brick and the brick economy's reliance on carbon fuels. That's Russia, India and China. And whether that is something that should be included in that that analysis.
So a referral, Chairman, to the emerging economies, as you say, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and their reliance on fossil fuels. I'm happy to put a note in the register to that effect in terms of reliance on such fuels.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Those are my points.
Any further questions? No. Can I just raise? I'm not sure whether it necessarily it should be in the risk register, because it's a sort of no, or nearly no. But somewhere, are we going to get a report on the consequences for the fund of the McLeod judgment? If everyone knows what that is.
Yes, Chairman. The government published a paper. I think it was late last week, which we are still perusing and waiting for advice from our consultants. So that has obviously taken some considerable time. It's not been an uncomplicated situation to sort out, and it flows from the challenge by a High Court judge who was actually a pension fund beneficiary. A challenge on age discrimination in the introduction of the new career average scheme back in 2014. So the work that will need to be done flows from an assessment as to whether members who are approaching their retirement age and therefore about to become pensioners, whether or not they are better off with either the old defined benefit final salary regulations or the career average scheme that came in from 2014. So it's a very complicated comparison that's required, and there will be additional work for our administrators in terms of how that will work. But in terms of interpreting and going through the government's paper on how they plan to respond, or how they have set out the roadmap forward, there's still some work to be done on that, and we will bring a paper to the next committee and to the board on the next occasion.
Thank you very much.
Could I ask, sorry, Councillor, could I ask about the financial effect of that, though, Phil? Is who is going to pick up the tab for that, if there is a tab for it?
Well, across the LGPS, a conservative figure has been bandied about, and it's oft quoted in most publications as to the total cost being around £17 billion. Now that will be picked up, I would say, by the administering authorities in their contribution rates that are set by the actuary every 3 years. So it will be picked up by the employer authorities in the employer contribution rates in the future.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on that? In which case we've so this register. I think that is the end of the public part of the agenda. Yes, am I right? I think it is, yes. Hello?
Yes, that's correct, yes, Chair.
Right. Okay. Well, in which case, can we go into the part B then? Is that all right? Are we in part B now?